Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Ecotech. On today's episode of Ecotech, we're going to talk about autonomous vehicles and the new federal safety standards for these vehicles. But before we get into their safety standards, the first thing I want to talk about is what exactly is an autonomous vehicle? In short, an autonomous vehicle is basically a self-driving car. It's a driverless car that does not have a human driver. This kind of car senses its environment or its surroundings and moves without human input. And so that's just a simple description of what an autonomous vehicle actually is. Now, this is not to be confused with autonomous vehicle assistants, like the ones that you see that come inside of Teslas. This sort of system doesn't necessarily make the vehicle completely autonomous. And this is because it actually requires human input to function properly. So now that we understand a little bit about autonomous vehicles and the foundation of what we're actually talking about today, why is the fact that we have new federal safety standards for these vehicles so important? And more importantly, how were these safety standards incorporated into the fabric that we already have for vehicles right now? So let's start with how this all was incorporated. A government agency changed the terminology of the federal motor vehicle safety standards to accommodate the shift from a human driver to a machine. So the change to the safety standards, they include guidelines and they also include methods to hold manufacturers responsible while they're producing these vehicles. Now, it's important to note that these rules and these changes, they only really apply to the autonomous vehicles that will actually be occupied by humans or have humans inside of them. And so you might be thinking like, why now? I don't really see any of these type of vehicles anywhere on the roads. And you would be right. I mean, for the most part, we only see these as like concept vehicles in conventions. And you would assume that in order to get these things actually out on the road, there would be some really big overhaul of the whole layout that we have of our infrastructure. But apparently, that is just not the case. It all just comes down to regulation. These guidelines are being put in place for really important reasons. The first one would be to lay the foundation for the upcoming shift so that safety is at the core from the blueprints of these vehicles to the manufacturing factories that will put them together, all the way up until it actually reaches the consumer. And to take one step in many to keep safety standards at pace with the development of automated driving technologies. And so those two things, I think, are really, really important reasons why these safety standards are coming about at this time. In short, they just want to lay the groundwork for what's coming. All right, and so you might be thinking, okay, this is all fine and this is all well, but what does this actually mean for me? What does this mean for like the consumer? Now that autonomous vehicles officially have a set of safety standards, it's possible that in the near future, autonomous vehicles will actually start making an appearance on our roads. From a consumer standpoint, this means that these vehicles could offer services to us. Even if you can't buy one, you might still be able to use one as a service. For instance, a taxi service or a shuttle service. So as far as I've been able to understand from a few articles that I've read, I think we'll start to see autonomous vehicles as more of a service, and then it will be something more widespread where consumers can actually buy these cars. I'm not really sure that the consumer models are really ready to hit the road. And so to continue with what this really means for the consumer, currently there are many companies making self-driving cars, and we've mostly seen them as more of a concept than an actual reality. But with these new implemented safety standards, that goes into detail about everything from airbag placement to lock requirements to removing the term driver for this category of vehicle. It's not too crazy to imagine that we might see this develop as an actual mode of transportation in our lifetime. Autonomous vehicle federal safety standards are now in place. The possibilities have completely opened up for these vehicles to actually start hitting the road. But what are the concerns? Are these vehicles safe? Can we really trust machines to take humans from one place to another? How much will these services cost? Will the price be higher? Will the price be lower? Will it stay the same? And how much does one of these autonomous vehicles for an actual consumer cost? Is there training involved? Because surely there's a learning curve, right? Well, all these questions and more are the kinds of questions that we still have about autonomous vehicle technology. While this episode didn't necessarily cover a whole lot, I really do hope you were able to take something away from that, maybe a little understanding about autonomous vehicles and the new federal safety standards that have just been implemented this year and what that might mean for you and the things that you will see around you. We live in an ever-changing world, and there's always something new happening and coming about. So it's always really nice when you can just get a little glimpse of what's actually going on, what people are doing, what they're changing. Because as long as we're looking out and constantly searching for the information to deliver to you, you'll always be in the know. All right, guys, so that's been another episode of Ecotech. See you guys in the next one.